And I 100% really agree and appreciate how the bike bus movement has really put urgency and is actively putting urgency on like, well, what if this young person could now ride their bicycle on their own to their own school without the bike bus?
Hey everyone, welcome to the Active Towns channel. My name is John Simmerman, and that is Joshua Funches with the National Youth Bike Council and the Youth Bike Summit. We're going to be talking about the upcoming bike summit that is going to be coming up in June and background information on the National Youth Bike Council. So without further ado, let's hear from Joshua. Joshua, thank you so much for joining me on the Active Towns podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, John. It's really great to be here.
Hey, take a moment and just share with the audience, who is Joshua?
Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua. I'm currently a software engineer by day, and at night, I lead a very crucial movement called the National Youth Bike Council. Philadelphia is my home, and I would have to say that I've definitely been blessed to travel from all the different locations that I've been. But I started, getting very involved with bicycling at an organization called Neighborhood Bike Works in Philly in 2013.
Fantastic. That's great. And I got to meet you in person recently because are you currently in Austin, Texas?
I am currently in Austin, Texas. I just made the move like a little while ago.
Fantastic. Well, what prompted the move?
Actually, so I was looking to get involved in bicycling in a different scene, but also just trying to get involved in like a new city, explore a little bit more. And then, as I said, I've traveled a little bit. Once you start traveling, you see some things, you're just like, wait, hold on. Like, I have to keep looking for more. And so I just kept looking for something different. And I came here once, actually, for the National Youth Bike Council to do some work and just kind of fell in love with Austin. And I was like, I have to explore a little bit more. Plus, I love the weather.
Well, that's so cool. It surprised the heck out of me. I mean, you and I have been emailing back and forth over the past, basically year. And, trying to schedule this. And we finally came down to this particular date. And today's date is November 15th. This is actually going to air in January. So we're holding this, off a little bit and rolling it out in the new year. But I was kind of blown away. It's like you had mentioned, oh, by the way, I'm in Austin now. And I'm like, wait, what?
I didn't even know you were in Austin. Someone told me that, the Active Podcast man. I was like, oh, you're talking about John? He's like, yeah. He's like, he's in Austin. I was like, really? I said, I think I really chose one of the best cities to come to explore. And so we got a chance to meet shortly before.
And I owe you a bike tour. I owe you a tour to be able to get out and show you some of the Dutch-inspired bicycle network that the city of Austin is building. It's one of the key things that I try to do is celebrate the wins that are happening in cities around the globe. And it's wonderful to be able to have this opportunity to live in a city that's really committed to building out the all ages and abilities, high comfort bicycle network. So we'll definitely make that happen sooner rather than later now that you're here in town. So let's do this. Let's take the calendar back a little bit and talk a little bit about the Youth Bike Summit and the council too. So what's really the history to this movement and the group coming together?
Yeah, well, this photo actually that we're looking at right here, this is a while back. I can't even remember who took that photo actually of me. But this was the youth council at Neighborhood Bike Works. I mentioned that's kind of where I started. And a lot of this is going to be from my perspective, but like every single person on this council kind of had like a different role and we were all involved, but this was actually not the original group. The original group was actually 4 people. And we were all on, I think, what Neighborhood Bike Works called like their race team. But they said to us one year, like, hey, we're going to this event called the Youth Bike Summit and you can come too. And I was like, all right, I don't even know what that is. That sounds like a good idea though.
When you mean the bike summit, you literally mean like the bike summit that the League of American Bicyclists does in Washington, D.C. in March, right?
Actually, I meant the Youth Bike Summit, actually.
Oh, the Youth Bike Summit. So there was already a Youth Bike Summit. Ah, okay.
Yeah, it has a really interesting history because the Youth Bike Summit was already going on since 2011, but I didn't get involved into bicycling until 2013. Right. And then I think it was in 2015 that they just decided to create this youth council program and they invited 4 people. And the stipulation of going was that we had to join the youth council after we came back. We had to go
Okay.
collect some information for, we can bring back to like our neighborhood bike. Like, what are some things we want to see here that we don't have, or something like that. And that's kind of how it got started. I think this edition that we're looking at right here is probably maybe the second or third edition of Youth Council,
Okay.
maybe 2016, when we had like, a few members. I think we even grew, but yeah, this is kind of how it all got started.
Yeah.
And even after
Fantastic.
that too,
Yeah.
like
And this is the neighborhood bike shop.
this is the bike shop. This is the old bike shop, actually. It used to be in a basement of a church. This group, what you're looking at right here, they got like special shirts. They were black instead of like the yellow version. The black one kind of means that you went through like an advanced bicycle mechanics. And so I think I was like a youth council member helping them go through their advanced mechanic experience. So I was wearing the shirt the whole time, them knowing that, hey, one day they're going to get that shirt. So it was really neat.
Got it. Got it. Fantastic. That's great. And so part of the original. Oh yeah, here's the black shirts
This is
and
probably, yeah. This one right here. I was like, how many people? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. About seven council members. That was probably one of the most times where we had like the most amount of people. It was really nice. Yeah, and all of them are actually not even in that photo.
yeah. Wow. Wow. Fantastic. And this is approximately what year do you think?
Probably 17.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but you can see some of us are wearing like 2-0 shirts. The neighborhood bikers, I think, was like celebrating the anniversary or something like that. I can't remember what it was though.
Yeah. And all pretty much, these shots are all sort of in the Philadelphia area.
Yeah, all of them are in the Philadelphia area. This was actually right outside the new shop that Neighborhood Bike Works is currently in right now, where they opened it up, and then we kind of like thrived in that new area, thinking like, oh, like now we can do this with youth council, now we can do that with youth council. It was kind of like an open book, scrappy. We were just kind of doing whatever we thought would make sense for the young people. This is us having a bit of too much fun. Obviously, I cannot remember who took that photo.
But it's a great shot.
Yeah. This is in Philadelphia as well. I guess if anyone in the comments actually knows where that is, that'd be really funny. Um, and yeah, these are some of the other council members that weren't included in the original one. But we like, we grew, we went down a little bit, grew, but you'll see like there's a common thing with some folks kind of sticking around the whole time. But it was definitely a good experience. I think this is kind of where I learned the majority of like my own leadership and how I figured out that like, I enjoy bicycles and kind of the community that they created around the folks that I got a chance to meet and all of our different interests and stuff like that and where we all came from. And this photo actually is from one of the youth bike summits that we got a chance to go to. So as you can see, like every year, the first group of youth council member went, and then every single year after that, it was just kind of the council members that went. And sometimes we bring in new people that are not a part of the council to see if they'd like to be a part of the council, but also go to this super fun event. So it's like a really great trade-off. You get more youth leaders, but then you also bring them around a bunch of other youth leaders who are already actively in a specific movement. It was really neat. And then I don't know why I had this little lights on my head.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's a good look. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good look.
Oh yeah,
Fantastic.
this is another great photo. We're all actively going back home
Okay.
after having attended the Youth Bike Summit. I think, and if I would even remember which years these was, I know this was in Minnesota, at
Okay.
least, which
Wow.
was a
Okay.
very interesting time. The Youth Bike Summit kind of hops from different city to different
Yeah.
city, so it's been in Minnesota. That's where I've traveled with Neighborhood Bike Works. It's been in Washington. I traveled
Okay.
there for the first time with them, Seattle, and then went to DC, New York. But I didn't go to the one in Atlanta, but it's been in Atlanta
Okay.
as well.
Fantastic.
But this photo right here is probably 2017. And this was the year that the council kind of came into play. For a long time, I was on the youth, the youth council at Neighborhood Bike Works. But then a year after that, in 2016, we started piloting this idea of like, what if we have like all these different youth groups that are coming together, come together and kind of be a thing without the adults. And so you'll see that the individual standing to my left is actually, if you can identify who I am, but
Yeah.
the individual
Right.
to my
Right.
left,
Right there
yeah,
in the middle.
yeah, this is a really interesting photo actually.
Yeah.
But the one to my left is actually not even from the Neighborhood Bike Works Youth Council.
Mhm.
They're from a different council in Seattle called Bike Works.
Okay.
It's an organization called Bike Works, and he was on their, yak at the time. And so this is like the original group where we just started as like a group chat.
Yeah.
And I think it turned into like an emailing list, and then it was turned into like some monthly calls, and then it just kept evolving from there.
Fantastic. That's awesome.
So, we started
All
to
dressed
contribute
up
to like,
too. Yeah.
oh yeah. So actually, I should have included this photo too. There was I think her name was Jeanette. But we started being a little pesky because we're kind of curious about like what is the space really involved and stuff like that. So we decided to get dressed one day in Philly. This is myself and this is Joe, and we just decided to go out to like one of these events where they're kind of having like petitions being signed and stuff like that. We were kind of like just in the neighborhood bike works bubble. We didn't really do like, general city advocacy. So we just started getting a little, started asking some questions and started going out to some of these events, and we got all dressed up because we kind of thought that's what you do. But I'm so glad that the bicycle community is way more relaxed than we originally thought from the outside coming in. So this is kind of like how we envisioned what we were walking into. And I think it was about like just getting more bike lanes in on specific streets. I think the organization was called Otis, and they were giving different designs in this little area that we went to, and a bunch of people were just walking around looking at the designs, either signing their name on a petition or just being informed. And it was a nice time. And folks kind of just looked at us and they were like, "Wow, they're here and they're all dressed up. Like this is so amazing. We need more of this." And it was kind of in that moment that I was in Philadelphia doing like National Youth Bike Council, just kind of trying to be like the youth voice that we thought we could be. And it was like one of the moments that we really also saw once again where someone was like, "Wow, we need more of this." And I was like,
Exactly.
I,
Yeah.
I know we do, but I didn't know it was needed that much. It was kind of like we were like mini celebrities walking around the area as we were kind of like looking at different things. People wanted to hand us all these different things and talk to us. And, I think we even got some pictures taken with people and stuff like that. It was kind of interesting, but at the same time, I felt once again the same thing that I felt kind of at the Youth Bike Summit, that like there's a need for more youth representation in an organized fashion, like in a way organized fashion, to getting young people involved. People love to see it. The only other person that was there that was a young person was a child, and they were let me specify that they were probably 2 years old or 3 years old, kind of with their mom. But other than that, there was no other young people at that event.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I've actually interviewed past guests on the podcast who have even, proposed that we need to engage children from the very young to the teenage years in really street design and city design. Because when we think of it, so much of our built environment, our neighborhoods, our communities, have isolated children. And so it's like, yeah, I can totally see where people are like, "Oh, we're so delighted you're here. What do you think about all this?"
Yeah, I mean, isolated is an understatement, but I 100% agree that there needs to be something more formalized. Like we have lots of systems for children nowadays, and I just don't see enough systems in reference to getting young people involved in, youth bike advocacy or just advocacy in general, urban planning and stuff like that. Like you kind of just, a lot of the folks you talk to, they might just fall into it, if that makes sense. They kind of just discovered it, or like, "Oh, I knew I wanted to do this, but I didn't really know what it was called. And maybe I went to college or something like that." But imagine like how many more things like how many more opportunities and pathways we can kind of carve out if we start focusing on that.
Well, and also being able to, if we are able to create a community, earlier I referenced the cycle network here in Austin as being an all ages and abilities cycle network, safe and inviting for everyone. Suddenly, if you're able to actually achieve that as a city, as a community, you can start to empower children to be more free range kids. And with the bike, the bike is that freedom machine of being able to get around the neighborhood, to go out with friends, to do stuff. And suddenly you're able as a youth to be able to start developing, critical socialization skills and navigation skills and all of these sorts of things. So that's part of this movement to try to create truly all ages and abilities facilities that are inviting and welcoming for everyone.
But I mean, I definitely agree, and I think that like what do they call that? The 8 to 80.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, basically it's everybody. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and don't even put a barrier on 8 or 80, even
And
younger and even older.
facts. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with that, and I think that like, what do they say? Like, it takes a village. But I mean, I personally feel like this village hasn't yet seen like what we're losing by not including strategically and through systems young people. Like, think about it, young people could be like the next greatest urban designers, the planners. Like, if we specifically see things that we don't like in today's world, there's no better people to tell than the young people, who actively are involved or are kind of growing up in this particular reality and might not understand that there are options, there are alternatives, there are other things that exist. And I think that, like, giving the control to young people through in that way is a very important thing to do. And we're missing out on opportunity every day by not specifically, making sure that young people are involved. I just think that that's bonkers to me. That's crazy. It baffles me. Like, we're not taking
Yeah, I mean,
advantage of this specific
it,
place.
exactly. And Tim Gill, the author one of the authors that I interviewed that talks about this, he says, imagine, what it's like to be, a child who's, what, 3 or 4 feet tall and seeing the world from that perspective. It's a completely different visualization. It's a completely different experience. And so being able to see the world through the eyes of a child, you're able to be like, oh yeah. Yeah. Just imagine, kneeling down on your knees and then trying to get around and navigate the world. And it's like, oh yeah, it's a lot different down here. So there's many different paradigms that kind of come out when you start to take into consideration and take seriously, and to your point, systematically including children and youth in being able to help design a city that is truly welcoming for everybody.
There was actually one group I talked to, and they weren't from the U.S., but I think it's like one of the privileges of doing work with the National Bike Council. Like, I get a chance to meet really great people, lots of people from different locations, different areas. I started in Philly, but now it's everywhere. And they did an idea where they took I mean, I don't remember how much funding it required, but they took a course. They taught teachers in different schools how to teach the course to students over the course of maybe, I think, 8 weeks. It was a class inside of the school where students were looking at their school. And I think maybe they did like 18 schools or something like that. They looked at these schools would look at their environment, and students would offer suggestions based on the things that they learned through the course. And before the 8 weeks is over, they were basically doing an assessment. Like, they did a little education and assessment, and then like, hey, can we actually do this thing? And I think it wasn't until the end that the students got a chance. Some of them got a chance to organize like legislators, and could say something like, "This is kind of what we want," and they might do a presentation. One thing that the organizer of this told me was that they were surprised at how accurate students were able to propose suggestions for their own school, which, I mean, should not sound surprising, but they were surprised that, like, you shouldn't really underestimate what kind of solutions students come up with. And then some of the schools actually even got a chance to implement the solutions that they were suggesting, which I thought was even more awesome, even more awesome. Like, not only did they get engaged, but they were informed. And then on top of that, they were making change to their community like that. Now that school can then see that specific thing being like, oh, I remember when I was in school, I did this for my school, or like, this is kind of what our grade did for, our school, or something like that. That's one great example of how to properly involve young people, and then also give them the exposure to something that they need.
Right. Okay. On the parting shot here, what's the story behind this big group?
So this was at the Youth Bike Summit, and kind of, again, like, we kind of had the autonomy to make a decision. And so we said, hey, what if at one of these youth bike summits, like the National Youth Bike Council, because we were, piloting the idea for a few years. This was 2019. And we said, what if we take our first youth only photo? Because at all the previous summits, they never took a youth only photo. So we were like, hey, we're going to have this place called like a youth only space. And at first, folks were kind of like, is that allowed? Should we do that? Like, only young people kind of thing. But we made it super simple, given the space and time that we had. And we played this game where you like took like the ball of yarn and throw it to one other person. And whoever catches it, the two people have to kind of like, find a similarity between each other, throw it, like, it's a really neat game. So this ended up being the first youth only photo that the Youth Bike Summit had. And then, thank God, 2019, because in 2020, things got
done.
So let the youth run, and then, something like that will happen.
Yeah. That's something. Yeah. So obviously, let's pull up the website here for the Youth Bike Summit, and so we've got this is the landing page for the Youth Bike Summit, and so it's back. It's coming in 2024, and let's play this video real quick.
Oh yeah,
This will,
let's play it.
yeah, this will be fun. So let me turn the volume up just a little bit. I won't have the volume on full blast, so that you can sort of give commentary to it as it's rolling. So it's going to be Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. First time it's ever going to be coming to Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I'm from Philly. I tried to make it come to Philly. Did my best. So this is the best we could do. But huge shout out to the youth organization that's stepping up to run the Youth Bike Summit, Community Bike Works. Fantastic organization. I think they're doing really well as well. So huge shout out to them and the partners that helped create this video as well.
Yeah.
I'm super excited. Actually, I learned too that this area has a lot to offer in reference to bicycling. They have like great trails. They have a velodrome, and then I think they also have the bicycle magazine folks out there. I'm probably missing a ton of people. They have great mountain biking trails and great partners as well. But we were like, you know, definitely have to bring it back. I think the thing that's interesting about the Youth Bike Summit coming back is that you'll know that like I mentioned, like, I was attending Youth Bike Summit as a youth council member from Neighborhood Bike Works. And then one year we piloted this National Youth Bike Council. That's why you saw the shirts and we were just like, we launched or something. And then now in 2024, I'm coming and I'm saying like, hey, the National Youth Bike Council is running the 2024 Youth Bike Summit in partnership with Community Bike. I don't know if that evolution like
Yeah.
strikes a chord, but like for me, I'm like, I couldn't be more ecstatic that like this is the evolution of the Youth Bike Summit, and this is kind of where this movement is going.
Yeah, and so to your point, yeah, as you just mentioned, at the bottom of this page here, you see it's the Youth Bike Summit led by the council, and here's the council landing page that you have here. Talk a little bit about the history behind the council and what you all are trying to do, and I guess one of the key things to anything that's like this where we age out. I was a member of 4-H, and so growing up with 4-H, eventually you outgrow 4-H, you get older and you move on, etc. So part of what we saw as trying to keep the vibrancy to a movement like that, where eventually you get age limited, is making sure that you have that constant flow of engagement of the next generation of kids coming in and populating that. So talk a little bit about the National Youth Bike Council, and also how you're able to keep fresh blood, as they say, coming in, fresh bodies and keeping people, kids engaged and youth engaged and involved.
Yeah, I mean, well, we still have applications rolling, so if you'd ever want to apply, John, we could always review it. I'll just throw that out there. But I mentioned that I currently work in tech, and tech is also another location where things are constantly evolving, constantly rotating, always. So I will say that change is nothing that we're not already used to, at least in a professional sense. So I also would argue that it should not be impossible to find some form of like system, program, whatever you want to call it, to also actively engage young people, even if it's quickly evolving, or young people are always, they come in at when they find the organization, and then they kind of depart. The council goes up to the age of 24. We adopted that from the Youth Bike Summit, so 24 and under, that's who we accept, normally between 13 and 24. We source a lot of our council members directly from the Youth Bike Summit, actually, because it's a very integral moment. It's like a really huge realization for any young person to get involved in that space. We also do it by recommendations and referrals. So if you actually go scroll up a little bit, you'll see that on one of the tabs, if you go to About Us and then Council Members, there's going to be like some alumni actually already listed. Some council members who didn't wait to the age out portion, and they kind of just moved on already.
Yeah.
So like all the way down as well, you'll see them. So how do we keep it? We normally source from Youth Bike Summit. What do council members normally do? That's the one question we get a lot. And I would have to say that like since we first started, we've been always evolving. Like I think first we started doing like annual projects with, like I said, it was a mailing list and then it was like a monthly call. We started doing annual projects. Everyone was a kind of little bit different, and sometimes they'd be virtual, sometimes they'd be physical. We formalized a whole lot more, and we're actively working on things like curating the Youth Bike Summit. So now future council members will probably just focus specifically on helping create that next really great Youth Bike Summit. And then council members that stick around will then have the opportunity to do things like work on maybe some of the blogs that we're working on every single year, highlighting different youth groups that are existing, different organizations that are doing really great things for young people. And so we have like a few groups kind of helping us out in different areas. But I would say like just like technology, we're constantly evolving and constantly putting out what we believe would be the best way to support young people. And it's been a really interesting journey to discover like what we feel like from like our perspective would help our peers the most.
Right, right. And I'm pausing here on the supporters list to give a shout out, to those organizations and companies that are helping support the group. And it looks like there's a show more tab here, so even more organizations and groups that are out there. Again, thank you so much to any and all of the organizations that are helping to backstop and really help support movements like this, because as you can attest to as the president of the National Youth Council, Bike Council, if you don't have the support by organizations, it makes it that much more difficult.
It really does make it that much more difficult. And I have to second that shout out, even to the partners as well. Like we have some really strong partners. They're all doing something very unique. It's just like our sponsors. It's been amazing, I have to say.
Yeah, good stuff. What have we not talked about yet that you think is really, really important that people understand about the Youth Bike Summit as well as the National Youth Bike Council?
I would say, well, there's one part that I feel like young people kind of play a really great role in when it comes to supporting the bicycling movement. And I would say that's kind of from the ideology standpoint, like maybe if you're having ideas and stuff like that. But I would also kind of say from the community adoption standpoint as well. And it sounds kind of weird, but I mean, maybe at some point in your life, you've probably been called like a pesky or maybe, what's the word I'm looking for? Rebel, right? Maybe. And it's probably when you were younger, right? Because you were adopting some new idea or some new culture and you and everybody else was just doing that. It happens all the time now. I feel like there's so many exciting things that the bicycle has to offer still even today in its different iterations, or the different things in which we can engage in that young people can specifically help with. I say that because when we talk about like I think a lot of folks in the transportation industry always say if they build it then people will come, right?
Right.
But with an asterisk, because like you could build it and someone could come, but maybe they could come mad or talking about all your not in my backyard type folks. They can come maybe confused as like I like this, but I don't know what it is.
Right.
Kind of thing. And that's kind of where you step into your education. But
well, and if I could interject, that's part of the challenge is that when cities take and communities take sort of a build it and they will come, and then that's where they stop, is just thinking, oh, we need to just build it and that's the magic, and then wipe our hands of it. Now we're done. It's like, yeah, that's only the start. You need to build the right it. It needs to be something that's truly welcoming to all ages and abilities. So the quality must be there. Attention to detail must be in there. And in addition to build it and they will come, it's like build it and activate it and educate and promote. And, to address a lot of the confusions that you just outlined of, okay, well, what is this and how do I use it? It's like, it's only the start of really of getting the infrastructure and the facilities down. You need to actually engage. And in fact, I would even go so far as to say that even before building it, it's like, have you engaged the youth? Like we were talking about earlier, it's like, because maybe they have a perspective like, oh, hey, yeah, this is great. I would love to be able to ride to school. But, oh, by the way, the skate park and the bike park is over here. Are you guys actually thinking about, making that connection from the school over to the bike park? Because that's where we want to go after school.
Exactly. 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 And I would say that young people are also very much like very early adopters of a lot of different things as well. So like it's not like we're talking about something that is quote unquote new, like the bicycle isn't necessarily new, but a lot of the things that we have access to, like for example, the bike bus, that I would say like let's assume that that's kind of like a new thing, but that's another great example actually of ways to engage young people in urban planning indirectly. Exactly. Like right before their school, like they got a chance to see like something maybe they like or they don't like, or something that'll make it a little bit easier for them to get to school, or just getting them involved in bicycle. Besides involving them in like a bicycle program at their school. So like with early adoption, I think that like when it comes to like getting the whole community involved, it's one of the perfect ways. Even if it comes off kind of as rebellish, give it a few years. It's not going
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
that
Yeah,
way.
yeah, 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 absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that about Bike Bus too, because Bike Bus is a great example of a software, an engagement activity that that says, okay, hey, here's the deal. We're going to meet at such and such time. Maybe it's every week. Maybe it's like Coach Balto does, and at the
Yeah. Shout
Alameda
out to him.
Elementary. Yeah, shout out to Sam there in the Portland area, where every Wednesday they ride. They ride to school. And what that does is it creates safety in numbers and power in numbers. And to your point, it like sort of kind of engages the youth. But I think that also equally as powerful, it engages and highlights to the parents that this is possible. And one of the things that I try to
Yeah.
emphasize with active towns is that's great, and will it also increase the freedom and the flexibility of the children moving forward? Or are they able to then maybe it's like, oh, this isn't scary anymore. I know how to do this, and it's like, and I know a safe way for me to do this. And you start to see the numbers of kids riding to school on a regular basis, and it's like, oh, cool. Well, if I can do this, maybe I can also ride to the bike park, the skate park, and it's like starting their world starts to expand in terms of the possibilities. And I get just this huge joy in my neighborhood here near Zilker Park of being able to see little bands of kids roaming around the neighborhood doing, going to their friend's house and playing and going to the park and going down to Barton Springs Pool. I mean, this is what we're talking about. We want to be able to engage kids so that they can, have that free range kid sort of experience, which is incredibly helpful from a development standpoint.
And the autonomy as well. Like I think that's exactly kind of what they need. Like I've come across interesting stories. Different folks kind of have like their own reason why like they feel like the bicycle is just like something much more preferable for them in their life. And I think that like when we think about engaging them first, like if you think about it like a flow or a system, we don't have no real great flow or a really great system for ways to engage young people and keep them involved. Where if we want to compare it against anything else, whether it's like another sport or career, there are very like linear flows that kind of just exist. I feel like there's a flow that really does need to be created. I think that's also kind of why the council continuously, has like its different iterations as we continue to evolve, because we're realizing like these are the places in where we should be part of that flow. And then these are the places in where we should empower other people to be the best part of themselves so they can be involved in that flow as well, knowing like this is kind of where our strengths are and this is where we need to empower others, specifically empower young people themselves to be able to also be a part of the solution, if that makes sense. I feel like Youth Bike Summit has been great for us to be empowered, and now we're turning around and being like, all right, now how can we empower other young people to be part of the solution as well? Because if you imagine like a young person maybe starting, like, oh yeah, I was like a part of this bike bus, and I started leading the bike bus every now and then, blah blah blah. Like on one day that maybe our coach did it, and it was a huge success, and then one day maybe they come, I don't know, like let's say to like a Youth Bike Summit, discover like, oh wow, this doesn't just happen in my neighborhood. This happens almost everywhere. This is great. First of all, that'd be really great. But then they also maybe come back maybe the next year and they speak about their success and inspire other young people to do the same thing. Then you wouldn't necessarily need to, have so much pressure on teachers to specifically start bike buses. Students themselves would be starting bike buses, and that would be such a great thing to have because then those students with those skills can then use that for anything else that they would like to use it for.
Yeah, I love that example too, because, and that's one of the things that that Sam, Coach Balto, talks about is that it's not sustainable if we're looking at always relying on either teachers or volunteer parents, et cetera. We need to get this to a point where we're building a safer infrastructure so that we can have free range kids, and we can also be able to build that leadership that sort of takes place where some of the older kids are able to help coach and bring along and make it something that's more sustainable from the standpoint of, they can handle this on their own too. And so I think that's one of the most important things that I hope will come out of the bike bus movement is really leveraging and putting some a sense of urgency behind the transformation of those routes to school to truly be safe and inviting, and being able to empower kids to be able to eventually, once the parents are able to feel like, okay, this is good. They can make it there, and you know what? I'm not worrying as much anymore. And once they develop the skills too, the bike handling skills, and they know how to do it safely, et cetera. It's like there's nothing better than that sense of, oh yeah, they've got this. They're maturing, and they have the self-confidence and the self-efficacy to actually be able to accomplish getting around their neighborhood.
I can't remember where I seen it, but and I might have also promoted it too. But shout out to the Bergen Bike Bus as well. I got a chance to go on that one with Emily Stott. She's a very
Which,
great
by the
teacher.
way, that's how we got connected. Emily,
Yeah, yeah,
yes, yeah.
yeah. She connected us, and I think we started having the conversation a little while ago. But Emily, they have I think at the time that I rode, there was a 3-year-old that was riding their bicycle, and they just looked like the cutest little thing ever. And I think that when it comes to parents, we're worried about entrusting, can it possible? I think they were doing a pretty good job of talking about how that doesn't matter. All young people can ride bicycles, and this, if you do it right, will have the right implications on young people. And then I 100% really agree and appreciate how the bike bus movement has really put urgency, and is actually putting urgency on well, what if this young person could now ride their bicycle on their own to their own school without the bike bus? That is something that I 100% appreciate, but not forgetting that if you think about it, as we're pushing the bike bus, there's going to be more young folks actively involved in bicycling, and that opens up, if you ask me, career opportunities and a lot of other opportunities. And so now we're seeing a push of urgency with infrastructure, but we should also be seeing a push of urgency with what do we do with all this potential youth energy? And we cannot forget about that, because if we forget about that, we're kind of just falling right back onto where everything kind of started. I'll ask you, for example, if you think about where a young person that's interested in bicycling specifically, they want to do something in the bicycle space, where do they go? What do they do? There's a lot of different answers, but do we have a mainstream answer? We don't. But we kind of need one. And the only mainstream answer that I can think of is maybe go race bicycles, because that's the first thing someone might think, oh, go race a bike. You like bikes so much, go race. But it's not the only thing that exists.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the nice things about a place like Austin is, and similar to I think in Philadelphia too, is there are some rich programs that are out there that like the Yellow Bike program here in Austin, which is a place where members of the community, including the youth, can learn how to become a bike mechanic. And you can actually earn a bike there too. So if you have somebody who can't afford to purchase their own bike, they can actually go and volunteer at the Yellow Bike program and be able to learn how to build a bike and how to become a bike mechanic. But they can also earn a bike while there. And it's one of those places where
awesome.
there's. Yeah, and it's one of those places where you can do a Franken bike too. So because they've got all the bike parts everywhere, and so literally, a kid could learn how to build a bike, and they could be like, ooh, I want that frame up there, and I want those windows or those wheels over there, and ooh, I love these pedals, and they can actually create their own bike. So yeah, I totally get that too, and also part of what cities can be doing too is thinking about, do we have, fun places where, kids can ride their bike, fun and safe places where they can do it. The Ninth Street Bike Park, which is, a world famous bike park here in Austin, Texas, is a place where, it's well known on YouTube, because it's where,
I
some
didn't even
kids.
know that actually.
Yeah, it's well known. A lot of the kids, have learned how to ride, and then eventually went on to the X Games to be participating and getting huge aerials and all this kind of cool stuff. And then, like out in the Miller neighborhood, they just built a new skate park / bike park.
I heard.
Just a few blocks away from a brand new middle school that's been built. And the middle school and the bike park are accessible through protected bikeways. And so, these are the types of things that we're talking about. In my vernacular, I consider them safe and inviting activity assets. They're assets within our built environment that encourage all ages and abilities to be able to get some activity in. And like I said, build out, sort of burn off some of that active energy that they have, and also be able to work on those socialization skills. Maybe they're meeting other kids from other neighborhoods, that they don't already go to school with, and they can come together with a commonality.
100%, 100%. I see you have our X up or Twitter up here.
So we have your X Twitter National Youth Bike Council. There's also an X / Twitter page for the Bike Summit as well. And it seems like you're pretty active out here on X, on Twitter. And yep, there's Sam Balto right there. You got that retweet just an hour ago on that. And this is a huge thing. One of the comments that's highlighted right here is that Black and brown youth would benefit from this so much as well. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we have had historically within the bicycle advocacy movement. It's just like it's oh so white. You know what I mean? And that's a travesty, because, what we really see is that level of empowerment when we are able to get more people of color engaged in riding bicycles, and the things that you mentioned it earlier, the things that are the possibilities. Could be potential careers, it could be this, it could be that. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's a huge Achilles heel that we have within the bicycle movement, not just in North America, even globally. So talk about it from your perspective, because you've been engaged in this since you were like yay tall.
Yeah, exactly. You can kind of already see me making some faces, because I'm like, the solution is, if you ask me if I'm kind of thinking about it, I'm thinking about it kind of like a problem solution standpoint. Like, I know there's definitely a solution for it. I think the solution needs some refinement, but like I said, young people have lots of ideas. I think that we're kind of not leaning on the pull of like, this is how I would like to be engaged kind of thing. So one time I think I was at like a conference and someone asked me, well, what do you do with Willie children or something like that? Because we were talking about like maybe like urban appeal, like the appeal of urban design. And they were like, well, what do you do about like the Willie children? And I was like, have you ever rode with the Willie children? Have you ever experienced what the Willie children experience? Have you ever talked to a Willie child? Like, if you haven't done none of those, then you kind of don't understand what they would think. And you could probably answer that question yourself. Like, what about them? You'd probably answer that yourself. You might not be able to Willie, but they wouldn't turn you away. Maybe they, laugh at you a little bit, but it happens. So I think that,
and for those who may not know what the Willie children are, describe that for the audience, and keeping in mind that this really truly is an international audience, so people are going to be tuning in, watching, and listening from around the globe.
Yeah. So Willie, we have like a huge culture here, actually a really huge culture in Philly, too, of taking your bicycle and lifting it up. And just riding with it on one wheel for like the longest amount you can. Normally, it can get pretty dangerous, where maybe like you're swerving or something like that out in the street into any form of traffic or whatever. I don't remember if in Philly they actually did that on the highway once. I think they did do it on the highway once here in Philly. It was really crazy. It was years ago. But yeah, that's kind of the
that's the culture. That's the movement that has taken place. I always give the props to that person. I almost said that kid, because sometimes sometimes it's not a kid, sometimes it's not a youth, because ultimately it's a heck of a lot of fun. So you even see some guys and go, wait a minute, you're about my age, what are you doing out there? but they're out there. I give huge props to that individual that's out there and doesn't even have a front wheel. It's like, you're really committed to this.
Yeah. So my answer or thought around like diversity around, I would say it kind of goes back to strategic or systematic approaches to engaging young people. I got involved through an after school program. And one of the reasons I love it so much is because I would argue that the school systems nowadays are kind of geared that, like, if you're in like a very predominantly Black or brown school, for the most part, at least this is my experience, odds are you're not going to be engaged in the bicycle program. A lot of the bicycle programs I've spoken to or talk with or engage with are not involved in Black and brown schools. But normally, because some of those schools are in urban areas, and urban schools are extremely hard to get a program into. So I'm, not necessarily putting blame on anybody specifically, but I think that, like, thinking through different ways of reaching young people is worth the effort, because I don't think the National Youth Bike Council would have been started, or the Youth Bike Summit will be continuing post-pandemic. One, if the council didn't pick it up, or two, if the council didn't exist. And I think it's really great that, like, when we look at the diversity of the council so far, it's very diverse, like, because this is the environment that we came from. So this is the environment that we're building. And I think that, like, one short-term solution could potentially be, and I'm just throwing out ideas here, would be continue and invest in like after-school programs, because those don't have a limit on, they're kind of involved in the community and they already reach those students after school. If you can't get into the school, catch them in the after-school program kind of thing. But I feel like more solutions like that would be worth thinking about, and then also just talking to the students themselves. I would put that first. Like talking to the students or the folks you're trying to reach first. Like, how, would you want to see this in school? Would you want to do this in school and stuff like that? It's always been very interesting to watch, but I think that's kind of how we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not involving more Black and brown students and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I want to definitely give a shout out to the Yellow Bike project and the Yellow Bike program here in Austin. They've done a fantastic job. As I said, you can, members of the community can learn how to build a bike and repair a bike and earn a bike. And it is a nonprofit community bike shop here in Austin, Texas, on the east side of town, which not too terribly far from where we met up at the Rethink 35 rally this past weekend. Fantastic initiative, fantastic program. Again, another one of those potential after-school sort of engagement opportunities. Boom, right there. The other one I have to give a shout out to is the Gisalo Cycling Initiative that also operates out on the east side of town. They actually are on the east side of Austin as well as down in San Antonio, with an express mission of working with schools that are traditionally or have been the Black and brown schools and are very much in need. And so they have bicycle education, engagement activities. They also, they're not just helping kids too. We don't see it in this particular photo, but they also work with older adults with the Golden Rollers program, and same thing, getting individuals out on bikes and being able to engage. And so I think that, there it is, Golden Rollers. Here's a shot here of that particular initiative, and they have a whole series of tricycles that help get those individuals that may not feel comfortable even balancing on a bike out, riding again. And so really tremendous programs. And I think that these are the types of programs that communities around the globe can be benchmarking off of and thinking about, of trying to engage, those communities, those traditionally underinvested in communities that are out there.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And thanks for the shout out. Also, I just want to say thank you too as well for having me on the podcast, specifically because I think that, like, advocacy and awareness we're still fighting a pretty hefty battle. Like, even with our youth advocacy, we get pushed back every now and then. There's lots of questions about can young people really do this particular work? Should we have faith in your particular solution? There's a lot of things like that still. So I appreciate, having the opportunity to be on here. And I think that the advocacy is still very much needed in awareness around specifically having, like, government organizations all the way to maybe even folks in the industry find ways to strategically support youth serving organizations, which would be just like a win-win for them because, more young people piped into loving bikes in the long run is just a great thing in general.
Yeah. Good stuff. To close us out here, so again, the Youth Bike Summit is coming once again. What are those dates again?
June 14th to June 16th. In 2024.
In Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. Congratulations of getting it into the state of Pennsylvania. I was up in that area not too terribly long ago. I had the honor of being the keynote speaker at the Trails and Greenways Summit for the state of Pennsylvania. And so got to rub shoulders with some folks that were involved with building trails throughout the state of Pennsylvania, including in Philadelphia. So that was a heck of a lot of fun. So really enjoyed that. It was the first time I'd ever visited Scranton, Pennsylvania, too. So that was kind of cool. So good stuff.
Yeah, it's another little major area. So my shout out would be sign up for the Youth Bike Summit newsletter and hopefully get a chance to see you there as well.
Fantastic. Joshua, thank you so much. It has been an absolute joy and pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Joshua about the National Youth Bike Council and the Youth Bike Summit. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and share it with a friend. And if you haven't done so already, I'd be honored to have you subscribe to the channel. Just click on that subscription button down below and ring the notifications bell. And if you're enjoying this content that I'm creating, please consider supporting my efforts out on Patreon. You can become one of the Active Towns ambassadors and have access to all this content ad-free and early. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. It means so much to me. And until next time, this is John signing off by wishing you much activity, health, and happiness. Cheers. And again, sending a huge thank you out to all my Active Towns ambassadors supporting the channel on Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, YouTube Super Thanks, as well as making contributions to the nonprofit and purchasing things from the Active Towns store. Every little bit adds up and it's much appreciated. Thank you all so much.